Okay, so now that we've got the fabric discovered, what we're going to do is create our first tenant. And remember, a tenant's really just a logical container for like management purposes. So think like a multi-tenant environment. I compare the tenants within UCS, or sorry, the tenants within ACI to the organizations and the locales within UCS because they're kind of like security domains. As a matter of fact, there is a security domain identifier within these tenants that we can configure, but they're very, very similar. So what we're going to do is create a tenant. I'll actually create more than just one so that you guys can kind of see what and how they're kind of used. We'll use like a DoD model. So let's pretend for a second that our ACI fabric is going to be hosting the Department of Defense. So we could have, a tenant in here called Army. We could have another one called Marines. Okay, and the DoD could have purchased this fabric and basically is just leasing out the fabric for basically resource and transit to the military units, Army and Marines in this case. So you could divvy it out, Coast Guard, Air Force, Navy, whatever you want to use. But again, what this allows us to do is we can have resources and policies in here that are, controlled by Army, people. And that's bad because I'm prior Army myself. But then you could have your Marine tenant, you could have your subnets, your bridge domains, VRS, etc., controlled by them. And again, they could control those policies themselves. So that's kind of the model that I'm going to use here just for fun, for labbing purposes, to just kind of hopefully throw the point across to you guys on how you can leverage these tenants within ACI. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this back up. What we'll do is we'll cruise over here to tenants, and notice that we see a couple in here by default. We see common, we see infrastructure, and we see management. So those all have different purposes. Common is in here because common is going to be basically a container and policies and whatnot that everyone can access. So it's a common container for kind of services that all tenants will be able to leverage. And you'll see this a lot used if you want to do, route leaking and whatnot. People will leverage the common tenant for that. Infrastructure, you guys remember the VLAN we created, the infrastructure VLAN? That's what that's kind of used for, all internal fabric communications. And then management's going to be used for in-band and out-of-band management connectivity, the access policies associated therein. We're going to see that this is also what's used for the discovery and automation with virtual machine managers and domains. So the management tenant is quite important. We're going to be leveraging it here probably in a couple different videos for our out-of-band management purposes, okay? But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to add a tenant. And we can see that it pops up, this screen where we're creating a new one. I'm going to call this one's going to be called Army. Notice we could put a description in here. We could say this is Army of one, whatever you want to say. We're not going to mess with monitoring policy. Security domains is hopefully something I'll get to in a future video where we can put in these numerical values in here and basically specify, tags or whatnot. Actually, this is the domain identity. But we can basically specify a security identifier that can be shared across to make sure you're only performing configuration that matches specific security domains. So I'm not going to do that at this point. We'll come back and hopefully hit that up. Down here, the VRF name. So if you guys remember, VRFs within ACI are also called contexts, which is pretty similar to NXOS if you think about it, because within a 7K or 5K, if you're creating a VRF, you're saying VRF context X. So basically, we're just creating a VRF or context name under this tenant here. Let's call this VRF prod. Okay, you could have a VRF production, a VRF dev, a VRF test, a VRF default, whatever you really want. But we're just going to go ahead and create a VRF here. Okay, and I'll click submit. So now we've created this Army tenant. I could add another one. I could come down here and I could say Marines. Again, we'll kind of just leave all this blank, but then I could come down here and I could say VRF prod under this guy. So I'm going to uncheck that so it doesn't take me there. But notice it doesn't throw a little fit. We can have the VRF prod within two different tenants. Okay, it's two separate VRFs, right? Because they're within different tenants. So now what we've done is we've created these different tenants that we can now leverage. Notice all the different policies and networking constructs that we can have, external bridged, external routed domains, which again we're going to get to as we go through this video series. But all of this is contained within this tenant. If I were to come back over here, we click on all tenants again, and then we go to Marines, notice Marines is going to have all the same stuff. So application profiles, networking constructs, security policies, which is our contracts and whatnot, troubleshooting policies, monitoring policies, service chaining. So all of that is contained within these respective tenants. Again, all the tenant really is a logical container for management within ACI.